Welcome to another episode of the Ship It Show. I'm Matt Halverson, sitting in this week for Robert Duffy, and I'm joined today by Patrick Lowndes from VendorHawk, VendorHawk.com. Great service for managing your SaaS tools, which we understand a lot of companies kind of load up on and maybe get a little out of control with. So we want to talk about how to better manage those tools and kind of manage the tension between needing them and wanting to experiment with them, but also wanting to kind of keep them under control.
Yep.
So can we start with just kind of that tension that you see in working with clients?
Yep.
How you've got a team that wants to experiment with lots of different tools in order to do their jobs better,
Yep.
and yet they've got maybe a finance department that's saying, whoa, let's pump the brakes on this.
Yeah. No, it's a great question, Matt. I think the challenge that you see in organizations is finance is responsible for controlling spend, and then you have even corporate IT trying to tell engineers, hey, this is what we're using. Problem there is obviously the best, newest tools that come out oftentimes don't fit into a budget cycle. They don't fit into the corporate structure of buying something. So most naturally, humans in general want to bypass the barriers to what they want. So in general, what we see is just people are buying on credit cards, which is common, and we think it actually should happen. So we think SaaS is actually a good thing, and a lot of engineers that love speed and love building and iterating quickly, you need the best tools. And so we see this tension though between I need the best, but I don't have budget for it, or finance is trying to block me on my credit card purchases. And so it's a real messy problem in most companies, and that's something that we set out to try to solve. But yeah, I think it's a great topic for our audience today.
Is it necessary for the finance department to understand the value of these tools in order to kind of appreciate their need?
Yeah.
And how do you effectively explain the value of those
help
tools?
them? Yeah, I think it falls squarely on the shoulders of the person that holds the purchase card, the credit card for the department. Mm-hmm. And we could talk about AWS and IaaS spend or PaaS spend till we're blue in the face, I'm sure. But all the other kinds of ancillary tools that developers need to get their job done. There's a lot of things that if finance sees Pendo, like what the heck is that, or Pingdo, like I don't even know what you're talking about. But the goal there again is I want to understand. So yes, you have to coach and almost teach. This is our tech stack. This is why we have it. Mm-hmm. You don't want to say everything's mission critical because you're going to lose some credibility with that. But you do need to delineate. These are the top priority tools we must have. And maybe even negotiate a little bit of room for the leniency to experiment and to move quickly. If you can't do that, obviously your technology itself is not going to stay cutting edge.
Right. So obviously one of the things that you guys do is help companies manage their tools and make sure that things don't get out of control. Tell me about maybe a company that you've worked with, without naming any names,
Sure.
that have let things get out of control, and how does that affect their ability to do their work?
No, we've talked with, we work with companies that are smaller and then some very large companies, and some of the largest ones, where procurement gets, spun up essentially, and we're talking, let's just call it 1,000 employees tech company. You get your first procurement person in there, and again, there's just a lot of consolidation of I want to control and I want to get the best deal. Mm. And again, I think the challenge there is you realize there's a lot of technology, but the issue there is, like what you said earlier, the value. What value? This looks similar. We show an overlapping tools analysis where you have similar tools doing similar functions, but the deeper question there is do we need these tools? And I think we've seen some customers that have started with, quite frankly, even you call it 2,000 or 3,000 software vendors, and actually get that down to less than 200 corporate wide. And then this was a really big company, but smaller companies, they usually think they have 50 to 100, and oftentimes have 2 to 4 or 500. And so it's a funny irony, but we like to bring visibility and then actually try to help DevOps leaders actually work with finance and IT to really make sure there's agreement about the tech stack that they're using.
What kind of reaction do you get when you help these people realize that they have 5 times as many tools as they thought they did?
There's definitely like an oh crap moment of, I didn't really realize that there's this much going on behind my back. But ironically, we show them that, hey, a lot of these are coming from engineering or the product team or DevOps or something. And so the challenge there, again, is, when the finance person shows up, like a controller or someone in procurement shows up, the DevOps, again, you have to be able to see, here are the reasons why we have these tools. And frankly, many companies, you're going to have stuff that you just forgot about. It's okay. but we need to make sure we level with finance. And if I could give any advice, it would be really to focus in on here's the top tier priority, why we have it, and you got to demonstrate that you've got some ways to control it and you keep track of it.
Yeah. What does the average finance department think of engineering teams? Like, what is their perception of engineering teams and their desire for more tools?
Yeah. Desire is probably a weaker word. I think they would maybe say an infatuation with the shiny thing that that moves, and it's got this thing I can just plug in a quick company card and spin up real quick. I mean, the perception is pretty frugal. Not frugal. Quite the opposite. It's pretty careless when it comes to spending, and quite frankly, just getting around the process. I think there's some work that the engineering team needs to do to build back up that trust and credibility. And so I think in general, again, part of doing that is to come back to them and say, hey, here's actually what we have, and kind of doing a self-audit helps. But what even really impressed them is say, hey, can you come in and audit us yourself, finance team? Can you actually show us what we've been spending money on? And obviously a tool like VendorHawk does that, and a shameless plug there. But you going and asking them to help you with that is a great way to posture and say, you know the most about our spend, but let me tell you why we have all these tools. So,
do you find that people are a little bit hesitant to do that because once they let the finance team start to peel back the layers, there maybe will lose a little bit of the flexibility that they've had in the past?
Yeah, I think it's two sides of an issue there of to what extent are you going to hold back and then still have to you have to convince them that you're a good steward of the budget, right? And so it's not just the budget that the VP of engineering has. It's also most companies that buy things, I had a study, it was upwards of 70% of what's bought in companies is actually not itemized in the budget. It's just pulled from the budget. So imagine if you have credibility and you want something that's not in your budget, imagine how much more trust you'll have if you lean in and actually let them help you. So I think it's a combination of getting the right level of trust, but also demonstrating like I have knowledge about these tools and why we need them. You got to find that delicate, and it is a delicate balance, I will say.
I imagine it would be.
Yeah.
So any final thoughts then about what someone in a kind of an engineering role or a tech leader role would want to do in order to kind of better manage things and get out ahead of this instead of having to wait until it's just out of control? Yeah.
Definitely do a bit of a self-audit. I'm sure many of you watching this probably have done these where you look at your credit card statements and try to figure out what is SaaS and technology that needs to maybe be turned off. But so do a self-audit is one. Two, you probably want to think about like how can I organize a view of a spreadsheet or a Google sheet or something where we could all collaborate around, if we have a trial for something for 6 weeks or even like 1 week or 14 days, how are we checking in with that and making sure that we're staying out in front of it? And if you do those two things alone, just checking what you've done and having a plan for where you're going, I think that'll go a long ways for a lot of engineering departments to really build up their reputation that we use a lot of technology and we're responsible for it and with it.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
We talk a lot about quick wins here, and I think that sounds like a really good way to start quickly.
VendorHawk can get you there even quicker. So anyway, great.
Okay, well, thanks for coming in, Patrick.
Hey,
I appreciate
awesome.
it.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Yep.
Yep.